Now, today is the last day for interested parties to submit expression of interest for Air India. Those submitting an interest are not bound to enter the next stage, and that is why government sources tell me they are expecting several players to express interest by the deadline of 5 p.m. today, because there's literally nothing to lose by submitting an expression of interest. So this is information we're picking up from senior members in the government, and this is based on their discussion with all of these private players the last couple of months. So the interested bidders could include Tatas, which could bid in partnership with Singapore Airlines. But what we should also maybe keep in mind is that there has been a huge controversy and allegations of corruption that have broken out in the last couple of days against Air Asia, which is also to do with the Tatas. So could that put a dampener in their interest in putting in a bid? The second party that may submit a bid is expected to be Jet Airways. Naresh Goel is believed to be very interested in bidding for Air India, and he might do so not with Etihad, but with the global alliance of KLM, Delta and Virgin. Jet Airways has already signed a pact, a metal neutrality pact with this global alliance, which basically means all of them use each other's planes, each other's metal. So this could be taking forward that partnership. The third party that may submit a bid and is the only one to have ever really written a letter out of all of them to the government is Indigo. But that was only for one set of operations. But government sources indicate they are expecting Indigo to submit an expression of interest. Could it be with Qatar Airways? Because Qatar Airways has also had discussions with the government, can't bid solo, so it's expected to bid along with Indigo. But let's just recap for you how important this disinvestment is. The sale of the Maharaja, crucial for the government to maintain its fisc. It's also a very bold decision that this government has taken. Let me go across to Ruchi Bhatia for more on this. She's joining us right outside the headquarters where all the action is taking place, the Deepam. Hi, Ruchi. You know, obviously, all the players have been trying to flex their muscle, get the government to change certain terms and conditions to their favor. But the government has been quite firm about it. Right now, it's not willing to tinker. So it says, submit an expression of interest. We are not going to extend our deadline.
Absolutely. That's a very firm word coming in, not just from the aviation secretary who spoke to ET Now yesterday, but also from the aviation minister. And while they are expecting a credible player to which they will be looking to sell Air India, they're also saying that the bids should be good enough. So that, is very clear from the government's end. Remember, today is the last day for submitting the deadline. By 5 p.m., all the parties can be putting in their expression of interest. And as you've been saying, there's no harm in putting in an expression of interest, because only thereafter will the bidding process start. So if any player is interested today at 5 p.m., that is when the deadline ends. In fact, we're also given to understand that the aviation ministry officials may be meeting the press as well at around 5:30. But let's talk about what this entire stake sale of Air India really means. Despite a lot of opposition coming in from the likes of the Swadeshi Jagran Manch, the government really wants to go ahead with it. It has a huge debt. The government also realizes that there is no point in being in a sector that is not core to you. So the aviation sector, we are seeing a lot of other private players as well, other private airlines, and they're doing a fairly decent job, which is why the government believes that there is no point in having an airline. So what exactly now they are looking to do is to sell Air India. In fact, Air India also has a huge debt of close to 50,000 crore rupees. And given our fiscal position, that kind of money can be spent in other sectors like healthcare, like education. And that's exactly what the government is intending to do. So, yes, of course, this is a huge reform if the government goes ahead, gets a good bid, and if they are able to take this process the whole hog. In terms of what is on the block this time around, so the government is looking at selling about 76% stake in Air India. They're also looking to divest some part of the ground handling arm, some parts of the other subsidiaries as well. So it's quite interesting in terms of what's on the table. The government has made it very clear it's only up to the other parties who are interested in picking up stake in Air India. And yes, this will also help the government in meeting part of their divestment target of close to 80,000 crore rupees this year. So the government is in a way hopeful and is betting big on this Air India stake sale.
Well, that's the hope, really. And yes, like you said, Ruchi, that the government is hopeful. But the problem is, this airline has not had many takers. Interglobe was there in the past, but then the concern was that they may not be able to successfully turn around this loss-making airline. Let's discuss that and more with Kapil Kaul, the CEO and director at CAPA, who joins us now on the show. Kapil, good afternoon. Thanks so much for joining us. A very vital day for not only Air India, its employees, but for the government as well. We have had in the past several reasons why bidders have not been very keen on snapping up this asset. One, of course, loss-making. Secondly, huge debt. Thirdly, none of the ratios look attractive, financial ratios, I mean, especially if you compare it to the other peers. But if you could just reiterate it for our viewers, what is it that's keeping buyers at a distance from Air India?
First of all, good afternoon. I want to reiterate that at CAPA, we believe that EOI will receive a significant response. And we continue to maintain that Air India is an excellent opportunity for financials and strategic investors. Primarily, it's a market which will continue to grow for at least quarter of a century. It's a market for the future, market of the 21st century. So our expectations are that there will be significant interest. But it's a very complex transaction. There are significant risks as well. So what I would think is that post the EOI, government would show flexibility and ensure that it will make necessary changes. Some of them are critical changes with respect to working capital debt, with respect to labor, with respect to their ownership of 24%, because the investors would need commitment that the government will stay away from strategic and day-to-day decisions. But if these government shows flexibility, these changes are made, I would expect that the post-EOI, a successful outcome would be achieved. But expression of interest is going to receive a good response. You may see some big players as well participating, basically the game starts post EOI when the shortlist is done and then the due diligence happens. During the due diligence, I think the government would need to show further flexibility.
Hi, Kapil. Good afternoon. This is Tara joining in from the New Delhi studio. It is a marquee day, an important day, expression of interest. I don't think we would have ever imagined, let's say 5 years ago, 7 years ago, or even last year that we would be talking about any of this. Yes, there are certain conditions that the airlines would like nothing more than to be changed. But if they are not changed, and that's what, the government has been on record about, do you think the expression of interest stage is going to fructify with all of them submitting a binding financial bid? I would also like to point out that we are picking up that the government thinks that it's going to be surprised by the number of bidders that will be evincing interest today because they have literally nothing to lose.
My sense is that the government would have a sense of who's bidding or who's not bidding. Obviously, no bid had come till last night, but it happens usually the last day of the possibly of the deadline. So surprises with getting a lot of traction, but that's not where the game is. As I said, it has to be made. It's being made. This whole project of divestment is doable. It's not an easy transaction because for them to continue. That's not going to be easy, but if you pragmatic decision, possibly at the highest level of this government, that getting Air India rid of India and ensuring that taxpayers' money doesn't fund a private capital. It has to be a decision at the highest level, because the way the expression of interest is, the current terms and conditions are, it may get challenging to make a successful outcome. But if the government is flexible and makes further changes, I think we will see a successful closure. But my challenge is that we may not see a deadline, but the December deadline being maintained. You may have to push it for 3, possibly 6 months. But I think if the government is flexible, you would see a successful outcome.
Hi Kapil, this is Ruchi Bhatia here from outside the office of the Department of Investment and Public Asset Management. That's where all the bids are going to come today. That's where all the action is really going to happen. Kapil, what I really want to ask you is, yes, you are saying that the government should be flexible and that will result in a good bidding process as far as Air India is concerned. But some of the players had said that the 24% stake that the government will continue to have, along with that the 2 board seats, in a way that could prove to be stumbling blocks as far as the operational independence is concerned. Do you believe the same? Do you believe that that's a valid concern coming in from some of the players?
Of the critical pivots around which the government's flexibility needs to be demonstrated. But if you look at the divestment history of India, whether it is Maruti or any divestments, I think the government stake has not resulted in any strategic, day-to-day interference or where the strategic issues and decisions get challenged. But yes, this is one of the concerns, and I think the government could give a commitment and ensure that the successive governments, it's not one government, it will be successive governments, don't basically renege on that commitment. So I think this is one of the change, but I think the main challenge would be with respect to the excessive debt and labor. These are 2 critical. Yes, the government's stake should stay financial, should stay not be a part of the board seat. Is only meant to look at a further leverage when the airline is turned around. I think they should stick to those objectives. By getting into board seat and will mean obviously different will demonstrate a different intention to the investors. But I continue to maintain main is this excessive working capital debt and very critical labor. I think that needs to be sorted out. But I've been reiterating this. I think the government's usually show flexibility that they would if the decision at the highest level is, if the decision is
I want to just come in for one last question, Kapil. Kapil, one last question before we let you go. This is Nayantara again. Obviously, the deadline is 5 p.m. Ahead of that, what we understand from the government side is, and the discussions it's been having is, that it is expecting Jet Airways to evince an interest along as is Tata's and Indigo. Is that what you're picking up at CAPA as well?
I don't want to specifically comment to that. All I can say that you will have some big names and ruling out that Jet would not invest. I've said this before when the decision, but there was some press release or some press comments from Jet that they are not bidding. I always had said that I won't be surprised if and rule out that they would bid closer to date. So I don't want to talk about specific names. All I can say is that the expression of interest would get a solid response, but that's not where the game is. The game is post EOI and flexibility from the government side in making critical changes would be critical.
All right, well, let's see the response that Air India gets this evening. 5 p.m. is the deadline. On that note, thanks a lot, Kapil, for joining in. Ruchi, to you as well. We'll reconnect with you once again, of course, to get an update on what exactly is happening outside the Deepam office.